The night Dominic Hayes saved me, I was not looking for a hero. I was looking for any door that would open before Ryan found me. Rain came down so hard it erased the street signs, turning the neighborhood into silver streaks and black shadows. My sneakers slapped against the pavement, soaked through, heavy as stones. My phone was dead in my coat pocket. My lungs burned. Every breath tasted like cold metal and panic. Behind me, somewhere beyond the curtain of rain, headlights crawled around the corner too slowly to be random. I knew that car. I knew the shape of it, the low hum of the engine, the way it rolled like it owned whatever road it touched. Ryan had always liked making people wait before he scared them. I cut across a lawn I had no business crossing, past trimmed hedges and a mailbox with gold numbers I could barely read. This was not my part of Boston. Houses here sat behind iron gates and long driveways, quiet and huge, with porch lights glowing like they had never known desperation. I stumbled once near the curb and caught myself on a stone pillar. My palms slid against wet granite. For one terrible second, I almost stopped. My body wanted to quit. My mind begged me to disappear. Then the headlights turned again. Closer. I pushed forward. At the end of the block, one gate stood open just wide enough for a person to slip through. Black iron. Security cameras. A driveway that curved toward a mansion half hidden by old trees. It looked less like a home and more like a warning. I went in anyway. Fear does not ask for permission. It chooses the nearest shelter and prays the shelter is not worse than the storm. Halfway up the driveway, my knees weakened. The house rose in front of me, 3 stories of pale stone and dark windows, with warm light spilling from the entryway. I reached the front steps, lifted my hand, and knocked once before my strength failed me. The sound was small. Pathetic. Almost swallowed by thunder. I tried again, harder this time, my fist landing against the door like a final confession. Please. That was all I could manage. Not a name. Not an explanation. Just please. Locks shifted from the other side. More than one. The door opened. And a wave of heat rolled over me, carrying the scent of cedarwood, rain-soaked wool, and something expensive I could not name. A man stood there in a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. Tall. Still. Too calm for 2 in the morning. Behind him, the marble floor shone under soft yellow light, and 2 men in dark suits appeared near the hallway like shadows that knew how to breathe. The man's eyes moved over me once. Not greedily. Not carelessly. Precisely. He saw the ripped sleeve of my coat, the mud on my jeans, the way I kept glancing over my shoulder even though there was nothing behind me yet but rain. His face did not change, but the air around him did. It tightened. "Who are you running from?" he asked. His voice was low, controlled, almost quiet, and somehow that made it more dangerous. I should have lied. I had learned how to lie politely. I had learned how to smile through fear, how to say I was fine, how to make my voice steady when nothing inside me was. But the storm had stripped me down to the truth. "My ex," I whispered. His gaze lifted past me, down the driveway, toward the open gate. Headlights flashed across the wet iron for half a second, then vanished behind the trees. The man did not step back. He did not ask what I had done to make Ryan angry. He did not tell me to calm down. He only turned his head slightly and said to one of the men behind him, "Close the gate." The order was soft. Immediate. Final. The man in the suit moved without question. Metal groaned in the distance as the gate began to shut. My heartbeat slammed so hard I thought I might fall right there on his perfect stone porch. "I don't want trouble," I said, though trouble had followed me all the way to his door. The man looked at me again, and for the first time, I noticed the faint scar near his eyebrow, the kind of mark that made his stillness feel earned. "You already found it," he said. Then he opened the door wider. "Come inside." I stared at him, at the warmth behind him, at the men who watched without speaking, at the gate closing between me and the only life. I had been trying to escape. I did not know his name yet. I did not know that the city whispered it like a prayer and a threat. I did not know that I had just stepped into the house of Dominic Hayes. All I knew was that, for the first time that night, the rain was behind me. I stepped across the threshold because my legs had forgotten how to stand in the rain. The warmth hit me first, then the silence. Not ordinary silence. Not the peaceful kind. This silence had rules. It lived in the polished marble floor, in the dark wood staircase, in the men who moved only when Dominic Hayes allowed them to move. Water dripped from my coat onto a rug that probably cost more than my entire apartment, and I hated myself for noticing that while my hands were still shaking. Dominic closed the door behind me. He did not slam it. He did not lock it loudly to scare me. He simply turned the deadbolt with a soft click that felt bigger than thunder. Outside, the storm kept throwing itself against the windows. Inside, every light was low and golden, every surface clean enough to make me feel like the mess I had brought in with me was a crime. "Towel," Dominic said. One of the men disappeared and returned almost instantly with a folded white towel. Dominic took it himself. That surprised me. Men like him, men with houses like this and men waiting in hallways, were not supposed to do small things with their own hands. He held it out, not touching me. Waiting. I stared at the towel like it might have strings attached. "You can take it, Ava," he said. My heart stopped for one beat. "How do you know my name?" His eyes moved to my chest, then back to my face. I looked down and saw my work badge still clipped crookedly to my damp sweater beneath my open coat. Bennett Floral Ava Bennett. I had forgotten it was there. I took the towel with fingers that barely worked. "I did not mean to come here," I said. "I did not know whose house this was. Most people do not reach my front door by accident. I was not most people tonight." Something passed through his expression. Not softness. Not pity. Something sharper than both. He looked toward the man nearest the hallway. "Marcus, check the east cameras. Find the car." The man nodded and vanished. Another one stayed near the archway, hands folded in front of him, eyes careful and empty. I wrapped the towel around my shoulders and tried to stop trembling. It did not work. My body still believed it was outside, still running, still counting seconds before headlights found me again. Dominic noticed. Of course he noticed. He seemed like the kind of man who could hear fear through walls. "Sit down before you fall," he said. I almost obeyed. Then the old habit rose inside me, stubborn and scared. "Do not tell me what to do." The room went still. The man by the archway looked at Dominic as if waiting for a storm of a different kind. Dominic only studied me. His eyes were gray, I realized, not black like I had thought at the door. Gray like winter water. Cold, but not careless. "Fair enough," he said. "Would you like to sit down?" That undid me more than an order would have. My throat tightened. I looked away before he could see it. "Yes." He gestured toward a long leather couch near the fireplace. I sat on the edge, keeping my shoes on, keeping my bag in my lap, keeping one eye on the door. Dominic remained standing a few feet away. Close enough to control the room. Far enough not to crowd me. "Do you need a hospital?" he asked. I shook my head too fast. Hospitals meant questions. Police reports. Phone calls. Forms with addresses. Ryan knew how to sound calm when other people were listening. He knew how to make me sound confused, dramatic, unreliable. "No hospital." Dominic heard the panic under the words. "Then my physician will come here." "No, she is a woman." I looked up. He had said it quietly, but it landed like he had seen through a locked door inside my chest. "She will ask before she touches you. So will everyone in this house." I wanted to believe him. That was the dangerous part. Behind him, Marcus returned from the hall with a tablet in his hand. He did not speak until Dominic looked at him. "Black sedan. Massachusetts plates." It slowed outside the gate, then left heading west. Dominic held out his hand. Marcus gave him the tablet. Dominic watched the screen for several seconds, his face unreadable. Then his thumb paused over the image. "Ryan Cole," he said. Not a question. My fingers clenched around the towel. "You know him?" Dominic looked at me, and the house seemed to grow colder despite the fire. "I know of him." Those 4 words changed the shape of the night. Ryan was not just my past standing outside the gate. He was connected to something already inside Dominic Hayes's world. I stood too quickly, and the room tilted. "I should go." Dominic did not move to stop me. He only said, "If you walk out now, he will know you were here. If he knows you were here, he will not be the only one looking for you by morning." My breath caught. The rain tapped harder against the glass, like fingers asking to be let in. "Why?" I whispered. Dominic looked at the dead phone in my hand, the broken work badge, the fear I had carried through his door, and then at something I had not noticed until his gaze found it. A small silver charm on my bracelet, stamped with a tiny black crown. Ryan had given it to me months ago. I had never known what it meant. Dominic did. "Because Ava," he said, his voice calm enough to frighten me, "you did not just run from a man. You ran from a network." The word network stayed in the room long after Dominic said it. It settled into the firelight, into the marble, into the hollow place beneath my ribs where fear had been living for months. I looked down at the silver charm on my bracelet. A tiny black crown. I had thought it was ugly when Ryan gave it to me, but he had smiled that careful smile and told me it meant loyalty. Back then, I still believed love was supposed to make you smaller if the other person was loud enough. "Take it off," Dominic said. My hand closed around the bracelet before I could stop myself. "Do not order me." His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "That charm is not jewelry. It is a marker." I swallowed. "For what?" Dominic glanced at Marcus, and the man stepped back as if the answer itself needed privacy. "For people who collect debts in ways that do not show up on bank statements." My stomach turned cold. The fire cracked softly beside me. Rain ran down the tall windows in shining lines, turning the dark garden outside into something blurred and unreal. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say Ryan was cruel, not connected. Dangerous, but not important. I wanted the nightmare to be ordinary because ordinary nightmares could end with a changed phone number and a locked apartment door. Dominic watched the hope die on my face. "How long have you had it?" he asked. 6 months. "Did he ever ask you to deliver anything? Hold anything? Sign anything?" "No." My answer came too quickly. His eyes narrowed. Not accusing. Listening for the break in my voice. I looked away. "He gave me an envelope once. He said it was for a friend. I left it at the counter of a cigar lounge downtown." The silence changed again. Marcus muttered something under his breath. Dominic raised one hand, and the room obeyed him. Even the muttering stopped. "Name of the lounge." I shook my head. "I do not remember." "Ava." My name in his voice did not sound like possession. It sounded like a line thrown into dark water. "Think." I pressed my fingers against my forehead. I could still smell the place if I tried. Leather chairs. Espresso. Rain on pavement outside. A green neon sign shaped like a horseshoe. "Vantage," I whispered. "Vantage Lounge." Dominic turned very still. It was the kind of stillness that made every other person in the room look unprepared. "That belongs to the Cole family." My mouth went dry. "Ryan's last name is Cole. Not that Cole family." I stared at him, trying to understand the shape of the trap I had been walking through without seeing it. My knees weakened again, and this time I sat before pride could stop me. The towel slipped from one shoulder. I caught it quickly, embarrassed by how badly I was shaking. Dominic noticed, but he did not come closer. "Here are the rules of my house," he said. "No one enters your room without permission. No one asks you questions when you are too tired to answer. No one touches you unless you agree. And you do not open the gate for anyone, no matter what name they use." I almost laughed, but it came out. Broken. You have rules for terrified strangers? I have rules for people under my roof. And what am I under your roof? His eyes held mine across the firelit room. Safe for tonight. That should have comforted me. Instead, it made my chest ache because he said for tonight, not forever, and some desperate part of me had already begun to want more than one night without looking over my shoulder. The front door opened, and cold air swept in. A woman entered carrying a black medical bag, her gray coat wet at the edges, her white hair pinned neatly at the back of her head. She looked at Dominic first, then at me, and her expression softened without pity. I am Dr. Helen Pierce, she said. I am going to ask before I do anything. You can say no. My throat tightened again. People kept giving me choices in this house, and I did not know what to do with them. Dominic stepped toward the hallway. I will be outside. I looked up too quickly. You are leaving? The question embarrassed me the moment it escaped. Dominic paused. For a second, something human moved behind his cold eyes. Only the room, he said. Not the house. Then he walked out, closing the door halfway, not all the way, leaving me with warmth, rain, and the strange terror of being protected by a man the city feared. Dr. Pierce worked with the kind of quiet that made me trust her before I was ready to admit it. She asked before she touched my wrist? She asked before she checked my shoulder? She asked before she cleaned the small cuts on my palms from where I had fallen against the driveway stones. Every question was simple. Every pause gave me a way out. I kept waiting for the hidden cost. There was always a cost. In my old life, kindness came with a receipt you did not see until later. But Dr. Pierce only wrapped my hand in clean gauze and said, You are exhausted, Ava. More than injured. I almost cried from how gently she said it. Exhausted sounded better than broken. It sounded like something sleep could fix. Outside the half-open door, I could see Dominic standing in the hallway with his back to us, one hand in his pocket, his head turned slightly toward Marcus. They spoke in low voices, too low for me to catch every word, but I heard enough. Vantage Lounge. Cole family. South Boston. Shipment. My name, once sharp and careful in Dominic's mouth. Dr. Pierce followed my stare. He will not let anyone into this room. Does he do that often? I asked. Protect strangers? She placed the last strip of medical tape along my palm. Dominic Hayes does very few things by accident. That should have scared me more than it did. When she left, Dominic returned with a glass of water and a folded sweatshirt, dark gray, clean, too large for me. He placed both on the coffee table, not in my hands. There is a guest room upstairs. It locks from the inside. Why would your guest room need that? Because guests should sleep without wondering who can walk in. I stared at him. There were men who said beautiful things because they wanted to be believed. Dominic said plain things like he had built them out of stone. I took the water. My fingers trembled around the glass. You said Ryan is connected to a network. Yes. And you know because you are part of one. He did not flinch. He did not pretend to be a businessman, or a misunderstood investor, or whatever men like him said in movies when they wanted clean hands. Yes. The honesty was worse than a lie. A lie would have given me something to reject. Truth just stood there and waited. Then why should I trust you? His eyes held mine. You should not. Not yet. My breath caught. That is your answer? That is the only honest one. Thunder rolled over the house, deep enough to rattle the windows. Somewhere downstairs, a phone rang once, then stopped. Dominic looked toward the hallway, and Marcus appeared almost instantly, holding out a cell phone. Front gate, Marcus said. He came back. My body went cold before I understood the words. Dominic took the phone and tapped the screen. A security camera feed filled it, showing the driveway entrance in grainy silver light. Ryan stood outside the closed iron gate under a black umbrella, his coat soaked at the shoulders, his face tilted toward the camera with the calm expression he saved for other people. Safe face. Reasonable face. The face that made waiters smile and neighbors wave. He lifted one hand and pressed the call button again. The sound echoed faintly from somewhere in the house. Dominic watched without speaking. I could not breathe. Ryan leaned closer to the camera, and even through the tiny speaker, his voice found me. I know she is in there. She gets confused when she is upset. I just want to take her home. The room tilted. There it was. The script. The polished concern. The version of me he had practiced until strangers believed it. I stood, but my knees nearly gave out. Dominic looked at me, not at Ryan. Is that what you want? The question was so quiet I almost missed it. No one had ever asked me that when Ryan was speaking. They asked if I was okay. They asked if there had been a misunderstanding. They asked if I was sure. Dominic asked what I wanted. My voice came out smaller than rain. No. Something in Dominic's face closed like a vault. He handed the phone back to Marcus. Tell Mr. Cole that Miss Bennett is unavailable. Marcus nodded. Anything else? Dominic turned toward the dark window where Ryan waited beyond the gate, smiling like the world still belonged to him. Yes, he said. Tell him the next lie he tells at my gate will cost him the comfort of being believed. Ryan did not leave right away. I watched him on the security screen from 10 feet away, though every instinct told me not to look. He stood outside the gate under the umbrella, saying things I could not hear anymore because Marcus had muted the feed, but I knew the shape of those words. Please. Misunderstanding. She needs help. I love her. He had always known how to make concerns sound like a clean shirt. Dominic stood beside the fireplace, one hand resting against the mantel, his face carved out of shadow and gold light. He did not watch Ryan. He watched me watching Ryan. That was worse somehow. It meant he understood the real danger was not at the gate. It was in the part of me that still felt guilty for making him angry. After several minutes, Ryan's smile faded. He stepped closer to the bars, then looked up at the cameras. The reasonable mask slipped for half a second, just long enough for the man underneath to show. My stomach folded in on itself. Dominic saw that too. Turn it off, he said. Marcus tapped the screen, and Ryan vanished. The room became too quiet. I wrapped the oversized sweatshirt tighter around myself, even though I had not changed into it yet. He is going to make this my fault, I whispered. He is going to tell everyone I ran away because I was unstable. He is going to call my boss, my landlord, my sister. You have a sister? Dominic asked. I closed my eyes. I should not have said that. Mia. She lives in Worcester. She has a baby. She does not need this. Dominic turned to Marcus. Find Mia Bennett. Quietly. Make sure no one gets near her building tonight. I stood too fast. No. Do not drag her into this. I am keeping her out of it. By sending your men to watch her? My voice cracked on the last word. Marcus looked away, as if my fear had weight. Dominic did not. He stepped closer, stopping several feet away, hands visible, voice low. Ava, listen to me. Ryan came to my gate at 2:43 in the morning and lied with a camera in his face. Men like that do not stop because a door closes. They look for windows. The truth of it moved through me like cold water. I hated him for saying it. I hated him more because he was right. You do not get to take over my life because you opened a door. His eyes sharpened. No, then what do you call this? I gestured at the room, the cameras, the men, the locked gates, the impossible house that had swallowed me whole. I call it one night of not letting a frightened woman get followed back into a storm. He said it without raising his voice. That made it harder to fight. I looked down at my hands. Dr. Pierce's clean white gauze covered the places where the driveway had scraped my skin. They looked like someone else's hands. Someone fragile. Someone I did not want to be. I am not weak, I said. The words came out before I knew I needed them. Dominic was silent for a moment. Then he said, I never thought you were. I looked up. His face had changed again, not softened exactly, but opened at the edges. Weak. People do not run through a storm with a dead phone and still knock on a stranger's door. Weak people do not say no when they have been taught it will cost them. Weak people do not survive men who confuse fear with love. My throat burned. No one had ever described survival like it was strength. Ryan had called it drama. Other people had called it complicated. Dominic called it what it was, and I did not know where to put that kindness. Marcus cleared his throat from the archway. The sedan is gone. Westbound toward Beacon Street. Dominic nodded once. Have someone follow from a distance. I stiffened. You said you were not taking over? I am not following him for you. I am following him because the charm on your wrist connects him to business that already belonged to me before you arrived. My fingers moved to the bracelet. The tiny black crown felt heavier now, like a secret I had been wearing in plain sight. Then take it. I reached for the clasp, fumbling because my hands still shook. Dominic did not move to help. He waited until I freed it myself. The bracelet dropped into my palm, silver and harmless looking. I held it out. He took it with a folded handkerchief, careful not to brush my skin. That small distance nearly broke me. What happens now? I asked. Dominic looked at the bracelet, then toward the rain-streaked windows where the city hid behind the storm. Now I find out why Ryan Cole put a crown on your wrist. He slipped the bracelet into his pocket and met my eyes again. And you sleep behind a door only you can open. The guest room was at the end of the second-floor hallway, behind a white door with a brass key already resting on the inside lock. That detail stopped me. Not the silk curtains or the king-sized bed or the rain tapping softly against the tall windows. The key. Dominic had meant what he said. The door could close from my side. The room smelled faintly of lavender and clean sheets, the kind of clean that made my old apartment feel suddenly far away, with its rattling radiator and thin walls and the neighbor downstairs who always played game shows too loud. A tray waited on the dresser with water, crackers, and a phone charger. Beside it sat a plain black cell phone still sealed in plastic. No note. No demand. Just preparation. I stood in the doorway, unable to move, because kindness without instructions felt like a language I had never learned. Dominic remained in the hall, one hand in his pocket, his shoulders framed by the soft light behind him. He did not step across the threshold. Dr. Pierce said you should eat something before you sleep. Do you always obey your doctor? I asked, because sarcasm was easier than gratitude. One corner of his mouth almost moved. Only when she threatens to lecture me. The almost smile disappeared so quickly I wondered if I had imagined it. I set my bag on the chair near the window. My wet sneakers squeaked against the floor. Is Mia safe? A car is parked across from her building. 2 of my people are watching from a distance. She will not see them unless she needs them. And Ryan? Still being followed. My hands tightened around the towel. That sounds illegal. Many useful things are. I turned to him then. That is supposed to comfort me? No. It is supposed to be true. There it was again. That brutal honesty. No polished lie. No promise that everything would be fine. Dominic did not offer comfort the way normal people did. He offered facts like weapons laid flat on a table and let me decide whether to pick them up. I do not know what you want from me, I said. His eyes met mine, steady and unreadable. Information. When you are ready. That is all? For now. For now should have made me afraid, but the words did not sound like a threat. They sounded like patience, which somehow frightened me more. I looked past him at the empty hallway. No one hovered. No one tried to listen. Even in a house full of dangerous men, there was more space around me than I had felt in years. Why do you care? I asked. Dominic was quiet for so long I thought he would not answer. Then his gaze shifted toward the staircase, toward some older part of the house, or maybe some older part of himself. My mother once stood on a porch in the rain, he said. She knocked on 3 doors before one opened. My breath caught. He did not elaborate. He did not turn it into a confession. But for a second, the man the city feared was not a shadow in a tailored shirt. He was a son remembering a woman no one had protected in time. Did someone help her? I asked softly. His face closed. Eventually. The word carried too much weight. It told me enough. I looked down at the key in the lock, then at the sealed phone, then at the man who had built an empire out of control and still somehow knew to leave a frightened woman alone in a room she could lock. Dominic, I said before he turned away. He paused. His name felt strange in my mouth, dangerous and ordinary at the same time. Thank you? He accepted it with a single nod, like gratitude was something he did not know how to hold. Sleep, Ava. He walked away, his footsteps fading down the hall. I closed the door and turned the key with shaking fingers. The click should have felt like a cage. It did not. It felt like a boundary. For the first time in months, I changed into dry clothes without listening for footsteps outside the door. I sat on the edge of the bed and ate one cracker in tiny bites because my stomach was too knotted for more. Then I picked up the sealed phone, staring at my own reflection in the plastic. I should have slept. I almost did. But when I reached into my bag for my wallet, my fingers brushed something hard in the lining. I froze. Slowly, carefully, I pulled out a small black USB drive I had never seen before. It had been hidden inside the torn seam of my bag. On one side, stamped in silver, was the same tiny crown Ryan had clipped around my wrist. I stared at the USB drive until the room seemed to tilt around it. The tiny crown caught the lamplight, bright and clean, as if it had not just turned my blood cold. I had carried it through the storm. Through Dominic's gate. Into his house. Into a room he had promised was safe. My first thought was Ryan. My second was worse. What if Dominic had known? What if all of this, the towel, the doctor, the locked door, the careful distance, had only been another way to get me to bring him what he wanted? I hated that the thought hurt. I hated that after only one night, a part of me wanted him to be different from every man who had ever used fear as a leash. I wrapped the USB drive in a tissue, shoved it into the pocket of the sweatshirt, and opened the door. The hallway was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that does not mean peace, but secrets holding their breath. I stepped out barefoot, the floor cool beneath me, and followed the faint sound of voices coming from below. Halfway down the staircase, I stopped. Dominic was not in the foyer. Marcus was. He stood near the front entrance with another man I had not seen before, older, broad-shouldered, wearing a navy suit and a hard expression. Their voices were low, but the house carried sound in strange ways. "She has it," the older man said. "Ryan would not come here himself unless he was sure." Marcus answered sharply. "Dominic gave orders. No one goes near her. Dominic is distracted." The older man almost laughed. "One frightened girl shows up in the rain, and suddenly he forgets what she walked in with." My fingers tightened around the banister. The USB drive felt hot in my pocket. "We hand her over before sunrise, or we hand over the drive," the older man continued. "Either way, this house stays out of the coal mess." My heart dropped so fast I had to grab the rail with both hands. Hand her over. The words opened something old inside me, something Ryan had spent months building. I could hear his voice without him being there. "See, Ava? No one protects you for free." I backed up one step. The floor creaked. Marcus looked up. Our eyes met. For a second, either of us moved. His face changed, not with guilt, but alarm. "Ava," he said. The older man turned. I ran. Not because I had a plan. I had never had a plan when fear took over. I only had movement. I ran back down the hallway, grabbed my bag from the guest room, and pushed the sealed phone into it with clumsy hands. The key shook in the lock as I closed the door behind me, as if locking an empty room could slow anyone down. There had to be another staircase. Houses like this always had back Ways, service halls, doors meant for staff and secrets. I found one near the linen closet, narrow and dim, leading down to a kitchen that smelled faintly of coffee and lemon cleaner. No one was there. The storm had quieted to a hard, steady rain, but the windows were still black, reflecting my pale face back at me like a warning. A side door stood near the pantry. It had an alarm panel beside it. I froze, waiting for footsteps. None came. My hands moved before my courage could disappear. I opened the door. The alarm beeped once, soft and polite, then flashed red. I slipped outside into the cold. Rain soaked me in seconds. Behind the house, the garden stretched toward a line of trees and a lower gate I had not seen from the driveway. I ran toward it, bag hitting my hip, breath tearing through my chest. I told myself Dominic had lied. I told myself the house had never been shelter. I told myself I was smart for leaving before dawn made me someone else's problem. Then my new phone buzzed inside my bag. Once. Twice. I should have ignored it. I pulled it out with wet fingers. A message glowed on the screen from an unknown number. Ava, this is Dominic. Do not leave through the south gate. The man downstairs is not mine anymore. Stop where you are. Let me reach you first. I stared at the words as the gate ahead clicked open by itself. The south gate opened 3 inches, then 6, then wide enough for a person to slip through. I stood frozen in the rain with Dominic's message glowing in my hand and the dark garden breathing around me. Stop where you are. Let me reach you first. The words should have sounded like another command. They did not. They sounded like warning lights on a bridge before it collapses. From beyond the gate, a black car rolled forward with its headlights off. Not Ryan's sedan. Something lower. Quieter. Its windshield reflected only rain and tree branches. My body understood before my mind did. I stepped back. The phone buzzed again. Ava. Move left. Now. This time I listened. I threw myself behind a stone fountain just as the car door opened. No shouting. No chaos. Just the soft crunch of shoes on wet gravel and a man's voice calling my name like he had a right to it. Ava Bennett. Nobody wants to hurt you. We only need what you took. I pressed one hand over my mouth. The USB drive in my pocket felt heavier than my whole body. Took. As if I had chosen any of this. As if secrets had not been sewn into my life without my permission. Another sound cut through the rain. Tires on the upper driveway. Fast but controlled. Headlights swept across the trees, and suddenly the garden turned white with light. The man near the gate stopped. I did not see Dominic at first. I saw the effect of him. The stranger's shoulders stiffened. The men behind him shifted backward. Even the rain seemed to quiet, as if the storm knew a bigger one had arrived. Dominic stepped out of a black SUV without an umbrella. Water darkened his shirt in seconds, but he moved like weather could not touch him. Marcus was behind him, pale and tense, with 2 of Dominic's men spreading out across the path. No one raised a hand. No one needed to. The entire garden changed ownership the moment Dominic appeared. Step away from her, he said. His voice was not loud. It did not have to be. The man from the gate lifted both hands slowly, trying to smile. This is a misunderstanding. Dominic looked at him the way a judge might look at a forged document. I heard that word at my front gate once tonight. I disliked it then, too. The man's smile thinned. The girl has property that belongs to my employer. The girl has a name. My breath caught. For simple words, and somehow they reached me behind the fountain more safely than any locked door. Dominic's eyes found mine through the rain. He did not tell me to come out. He did not demand the USB drive. He only looked at me, steady and clear, giving me one thing Ryan had never given me when other people were watching. A choice. Ava, he said. You can walk to me, or you can stay there. Either way, no one passes me to reach you. Something inside me broke, not in a painful way. More like a chain rusting loose after years of rain. I stood slowly. My knees shook. My hair stuck to my face. The sweatshirt clung heavy and cold to my shoulders. Every step toward Dominic felt impossible, then possible, then mine. The man near the gate watched the pocket of my sweatshirt. Dominic watched my face. That was the difference. When I reached him, I pulled out the USB drive with trembling fingers and held it between us. Ryan put this in my bag, I said. I did not know. I know. He did not take it right away. Do you want me to handle it? The question nearly ended me. Not will you give it to me. Not hand it over. Do you want me to handle it? I placed the drive in his palm because, for once, giving something away felt like getting part of myself back. Dominic closed his fingers around it and turned to the men by the gate. Tell the Cole family their courier is done being used. The man's face hardened. This will start a problem. Dominic's expression did not change. No. This will end one. He looked at Marcus without turning his head. Take Ava inside. Dr. Pierce checks her again. Then lock down every exit except the front. Marcus nodded, shame written across his face. I did not move. Dominic noticed. Of course he did. What is it? He asked. I looked from Marcus to the dark gate to the stranger who had called me property with different words. I heard them downstairs. I thought you were giving me to Ryan. Rain slid down Dominic's face, but his eyes stayed on mine. I know. You know? Marcus told me the moment you ran. He chose late, but he chose right. Marcus lowered his head. Dominic stepped closer, still leaving space between us. There are men in my house who understand fear as currency. I removed one tonight. I will remove any others. My voice shook. Why? For the first time, Dominic looked almost tired. Not weak. Never that. Just human beneath the armor. Because my house failed you for 5 minutes, he said. And 5 minutes is enough to ruin a life. I did not know what to say to that. So I said the only true thing left. I want to go inside. Dominic nodded once, as if that was all he had been waiting to hear. Marcus opened the path. The house glowed in the distance, no longer perfect, no longer safe in the simple way I had wanted it to be. But Dominic walked beside me through the rain without touching me, matching his pace to mine, and somehow that made the long way back feel like the first road I had ever chosen for myself. By the time we reached the house, the rain had softened into a steady whisper against the windows. Dr. Pierce checked my hands again in the downstairs sitting room while Dominic stood near the door, silent as a shadow with a heartbeat. Marcus waited in the hall, not hiding from what he had almost become part of. He looked at me once and said, I am sorry. I did not know what to do with his apology, so I only nodded. Some things were too heavy to forgive before sunrise. Dominic sent him away with one quiet order, and the house began to move around us, phones ringing low, doors closing, men speaking in careful tones. No one raised their voice. No one had to. The USB drive had changed everything. By morning, I learned what had been hidden on it. Names. Payments. Dates. Enough evidence to turn Ryan Cole from a man who scared women in private into a man authorities could finally see in public. Dominic did not hand it to one of his own people. He gave it to a federal contact through a lawyer whose shoes clicked across the marble floor at 6:20 in the morning. I watched from the staircase, wrapped in the gray sweatshirt, feeling like I had survived one life and had not yet been assigned another. Ryan called 17 times before breakfast. I did not answer. Then he called Mia. Dominic's people were already there. Nothing happened to her. Nothing reached her door. For the first time, Ryan's voice had nowhere to land. By noon, his name was on the news in careful language, the kind reporters use when a powerful man is no longer protected by powerful friends. No dramatic ending. No thunderous justice. Just paperwork, evidence, flashing cameras outside a courthouse, and Ryan covering his face as if shame had finally learned his address. I expected to feel victorious. I did not. I felt tired. Empty. Free in the way a room feels free after the fire has gone out, and the smoke is still in the walls. Dominic found me in the kitchen near sunset, staring at a cup of tea I had forgotten to drink. He had changed into a clean black suit, but there was a faint scratch near his wrist from the garden gate. Proof that even untouchable men could be marked by other people's storms. "Mia is safe," he said. "Your landlord has been contacted. Your apartment lock will be changed today. Your manager at the flower shop has been told you had a family emergency." I looked up. "You fixed my life without asking me." His expression did not shift, but something in his eyes did. Regret, maybe? Or the closest thing a man like Dominic Hayes allowed himself to show. "I made arrangements. You can undo any of them." That was when I understood the difference. Ryan had moved pieces of my life to trap me. Dominic moved them so I could reach the door. "I need to leave," I said. The room went very still. He gave one slow nod. "I know." No anger. No demand. No wounded pride dressed up as love. Just those two words, quiet enough to hurt. "Not because I am afraid of you," I said. "Because I need to remember what my own life feels like." Dominic looked at me for a long moment. "Then I will have a car take you wherever you want to go. No men watching my building. One car on the block for 24 hours. I opened my mouth. He added, "For Ryan's associates, not for you. After that, no one unless you ask." I studied him, searching for the hook inside the kindness. I did not find one. "Okay," I whispered. The next hour passed in soft sounds. A suitcase from the guest room closet. Dry shoes Dr. Pierce insisted I keep. A new phone with only 3 numbers saved in it, Mia, Dr. Pierce, and Dominic. He walked me to the front door just as the last light bled out over Boston, turning the wet driveway silver. The same door I had collapsed in front of the night before now stood open because I was leaving through it by choice. At the threshold I turned back. Dominic stayed inside the house, giving me the outside world first. "You said your mother knocked on 3 doors," I said. His face tightened almost imperceptibly. "Yes. I am glad yours opened." For once, he had no answer. The driver took me to Mia's apartment in Worcester, 50 miles away, where my sister cried before I could say a word and held me like she had been waiting to breathe. For 3 weeks, I did not see Dominic Hayes. I went back to work. I slept with a chair near the door until one night I forgot to put it there. I bought my own groceries. I replaced my bracelet with nothing. Then, on the first rainy evening in April, I found myself standing outside Bennett Floral after closing, holding a single white rose I had not meant to buy. A black SUV waited across the street, parked under a streetlight. Dominic stepped out, not moving toward me, only standing there in the rain like a question he would not force me to answer. I crossed the street because I wanted to. Not because I was hunted. Not because I was trapped. Because the door had opened once, and the man behind it had taught me that shelter was not a cage when you were free to leave. He looked at the rose in my hand. "Is that for someone?" I smiled, small but real. "For the house that gave me one night of peace." Dominic's eyes softened in a way the city would never believe. "And what do you want now, Ava?" The answer came easier than fear ever had. "A cup of coffee. Somewhere public. No bodyguards at the table." For the first time, I saw Dominic Hayes almost smile. "As you wish." He did not save me so I would belong to him. He sheltered me until I remembered I belonged to myself.